where data is seen as limited, there's a lack of data, and there's a paucity of data. But also, okay, yeah. But also in this data conundrum, despite data being available, despite more data being available more than ever in the world today, developing nations are still struggling with access to lack of valuable data. And more importantly, with the limited data that is available, they're still struggling to fully use the data they have. And this is a similarly paradoxical situation representing a data divide. And basically, I want to highlight this because as much as we talk about data deserts, it's important for us to also understand that in most cases, data exists. So it's a paradoxical situation such that there is no place in the world that you truly have data deserts. Data exists in almost every part of the world. Now, the issue now is the volume of the data that exists. What is the use of the data that exists? And have you been able to utilize the data that exists to generate insights to support decision making? And so you need to understand that the more you use data, the more important the data is to you, and the more interest, the more interest and need to generate more data will become. And I'll explain a lot of this as we move along in subsequent slides. So now that we've understood that even though we talk about data desert in a lot of scenarios, a lot of people cite data desert or lack of data in a lot of developing nations, some data still exists. And just to buttress that point, I want to list out some of the data that probably, I want to signpost the audience today to some of the data that probably exist that you might not be aware of, or you might not have known that they exist. So Google Earth Engine the Google Earth Engine data catalog is a collection of data sets that are available through Google Earth Engine, and it houses a wealth of data freely accessible to a lot of people and available in a number of developing countries. So that's one source of data that is very rich that people could leverage access to. And also, for some data sets that could be accessed via Google Earth Engine that are not available on the Google Earth Engine catalog, you can use the second link to access it. And this is a community-led effort to try to integrate a lot of data sets into Google Earth Engine. And Google Earth Engine itself is an application that helps you process large data sets in real time through connected computers, supercomputers. Another source of data that are available in a lot of developing countries, particularly Africa focused, and the last third bullet point is Grid 3. So Grid 3 is an acronym from georeferenced data for development. Interestingly, I've been part of this organization previously in my work experience supporting data-driven insights, and they only have data for African countries, unfortunately, but that is one rich data source that could be leveraged for a lot of things, a lot of solutions and problems or insights that you might want to dive into. World Pop Data Repository is also another data set that contains a lot of demographic data, health data information, and things like that. So that's another data set. I'm going to rush through this. There's a Microsoft Building Footprint data set. If you are not aware of these data sets already, It's a very vital data set that you need to know about. So building footprint data set has become more freely and openly available in the past 5 years. Previously, before that, for you to access building footprint data set, you had to actually spend thousands of dollars to actually do a data collection process. But through the efforts of a number of large organizations like Microsoft, building footprint data sets are now becoming openly available for a lot of developing countries. And not only Microsoft, there's a Google building footprint data set, there's a Ecopia building footprint data set. So there are more options for you to pick out from. Then the Microsoft roads as well. There's a Microsoft road data set that you can also leverage. And some of these data sets are very freely available. Some of them you can probably access through partnership agreements with the organization producing them and things like that. But these ones are actually freely available for a lot of developing nations. For remote sensing experts across or within the audience, you can access a lot of satellite imagery data set through USGS, X Explorer, Sentinel, 2 data, Landsat data set access through there. Additionally, the global human settlement layer data set is a rich data set with high spatial resolution information, and you can always access them freely available via this link. Interestingly as well, the World Settlement Footprint dataset. This dataset was previously commercial, but it's now openly available and freely available, particularly for developing nations. And I'm focusing on developing nations because in developed worlds, some of these datasets are always readily available, but in developing nations, we struggle to find some of these datasets. And so I'm signposting all these datasets because they are openly available now, and if you don't know about it or you've not heard about it before, it's time for you to explore some of these data sets and see how you can leverage it in some of your efforts and researches. OpenStreetMap is the holy grail that we've always known and loved, and we've been able to use over time, but it's also important for us to appreciate the effort that has gone into it. And lastly, the last bullet point I have here is the World Resource Institute. Now, this is a new data set that has come on my radar recently, and it comprises a lot of land use, land cover data, health data across developing nations, particularly focused on developing nations. So probably I'll share my slide after the presentation for you to leverage the links in the presentation and access some of these data sets. But yeah, now that we have established that, though we talk about data deserts, data lack of data or unavailability of data in developing nations, some data exists, actually do exist. We need to also be aware that even though this data exists, they are not perfect. And so you get to experience things like coarse resolution, meaning that the resolution is not as high enough for you to evaluate what you're looking at. For example, if you want to identify a building in a 1 kilometer resolution, 1 kilometer resolution, it might be very difficult for you because in a 1 kilometer resolution, it's almost impossible for you to identify a building or something less than something very small as a vegetation and things like that. So coarse resolution is a big problem for some of these data. Some of these data are outdated, and they are not up to date. For example, some of the Google building footprint, the inputs imagery that was used for those data production as far back as 2012 to 2020. So in some areas, you might be looking at building footprint that has been extracted from an imagery of 2012, and currently we're in 2024. So development might have changed drastically in those regions, and what you're looking at as a data set is far different from what is the reality on ground. So that is why it is important for you to be aware of some of these limitations of this data, which are not perfect. Incompleteness, this doesn't need explanation. Data are incomplete. And the last point here is inaccuracies or missing data. So the storyline in this slide is for you to take those data that are available, but treat them with caution and understand some of the metadata information associated with the data, and especially the accuracy of the data before you utilize such data. Because if you utilize such data without understanding this, you might be inheriting a lot of uncertainties into your insights, and this might skew the results that you might get out of using the data. So how do we nurture development in developing nations with the current existing landscape that we have around data and the limitation of data? I like this ring flow here, and it gives you a storyline of how we approach things. The first step is to formulate a question. What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to get answers for? What are you trying to what insight are you trying to derive? Once you identify your question, your hypothesis, then you can start to narrow down into what data sets are available to best answer these questions. And that is why this is where data comes in, because data is a driving force to answering some of those questions. And like I mentioned, even in data deserts, there's still some data. So you look for those data that are available and find out how best they can be used to answer the question that you formulated. And once you've identified the data that are available, you dive into analyzing them to generate some insights. Once you generated the insights, you apply them to the problem, and you apply them to the problem, developing methods, depending on what you're looking at. You announce the results and you assess. So once you assess, the question is, has it helped you resolve the problem that you originally started with? If not, then you start the cycle again. And that's why the search for truth is always a continuous cycle. And I have a bullet point here that says maximize the use of available data set to support informed decisions. So in a data desert scenario, you are not going to be looking for the best data set to answer the question. You're going to be looking for the available data sets. And at this point, because it is what is available that you're leveraging, you need to think about how you're going to leverage it. So that is what is not in the slide, how you're going to leverage it. And in the next couple of slides, I'm going to explain some instances where we've leveraged some data sets in innovative ways to answer some questions. And that's where we're going into. So quickly, in the next slide, in the heart of COVID-19, a lot of questions existed, a lot of challenges existed. And one of them was, how is it possible for people to maintain social distancing? Is it possible, particularly within urban areas where you have high density of population, clusters of buildings, is it possible for people to maintain social distancing? To answer this question, we dived into identifying what data sets were available, and two critical data sets were identified. We have building footprint data sets, which was in existence, and also we had a population data set, which at 100 by 100 meter grid cell. So a combination of this, well, with the combining this, we were able to generate what we call the ease of social distancing index. And basically, this index just highlights areas where it is more difficult for people to maintain social distancing, and areas where it is easier for people to maintain social distancing. And with this information across space, and with this information, you are able to be more informed. You're able to make more informed decisions as to where probably testing sites should be situated, where more testing should be enforced, and things like that. So policymakers were able to leverage these data sets to inform where vaccination points should be more spread out, or the first location for vaccination points, or where masks should be more enforced, and things like that. So this is one example where available data sets was leveraged to solve an immediate problem, or answer an immediate problem or question at the heat of COVID-19. And this was a project that was worked on by World Pop, a research organization within the University of Southampton, which I'm affiliated with. So the next example is leveraging building footprints. This is a research work actually, where we leveraged building footprints to predict settlement types. We know we have building footprint data sets. Now the question is, with that information alone, how are we able to accurately predict types of settlements, particularly within urban centers? And the answer was yes, we can. So basically, we developed a machine learning model that was able to look at building morphology, such as building height, building area, building length, building area, building length, building density, to calculate, to group buildings into clusters. So we know that, for example, industrial buildings would have a larger area compared to residential buildings. So that in itself is a characteristics that could be derived from building footprints, and we can understand that from the building area. So those insights were fed into a machine learning model that was able to predict settlement classes or settlement types more accurately across space. And yes, this is one of the research works that I'm very interested and very proud of, that has happened, and I've been following very closely. The next one is population estimation. So if you look across Africa and across a number of developing nations, census has been conducting censuses has always been an issue. For example, in Nigeria, the last time we conducted a census was 2006, and ideally we should have conducted the next census 2016 at a 10 years interval defined by United Nations, but currently we're in 2024, and there is no census in sight yet. So the question now beckons: how do we estimate population across space in a more high spatial resolution? And that's where this methodology provides an opportunity, and leveraging existing data sets. So there are two approaches. The first one is the top-down approach. The second one is the bottom-up approach, depending on the scenarios of where you find yourself. So for countries that have census counts that is probably not too old, you could disaggregate that into a higher resolution if they are released officially, publicly at administrative levels, such as local government, ward, or admin 2 or admin 1 boundaries. You can disaggregate that into a higher resolution of 100 by 100 meter grid cell. and be more specific as to where people are and people are not. That is an innovative way of disaggregating population into more higher spatial resolution. And the bottom-up approach is looking at places where they've never, probably the census is very, very, very old, and you want a more close to reality, close to the temporal resolution population. If you have microcensus information, you could leverage microcensus information and combination with some machine learning models, estimate population at 100 by 100 meter grid cell. This effort is also another research that has been happening within the World Pop Group, which I'm also particularly closely involved in. And we've currently utilized this top-down and bottom-up method of population mapping, population estimation for a number of countries in Africa, South America, and Asia. So, and particularly, the government have been very receptive in adopting this method, which is cost efficient than conducting a census in the short term. Even though census is the holy grail of data, because it not just only includes population count, it also includes building information and a lot of other demographic information. So this is not to replace a census, but this is a stopgap in scenarios where planning for census is taking longer than necessary, and they need to countries need to have population information to inform policies and things like that. So this is another approach. And the last approach the last use case I'm going to talk about is similarly also leveraging building footprints, in addition to a lot of covariates and in a machine learning model to classify building types into building types such as residential, non-residential, and mixed. Particularly in urban centers, this data set is valuable to support land use information, and also help in a lot of master plan, city growth plans, resource utilization, and things like that, and things along those lines. So we've been able to develop a machine learning model that leverages just building footprint information alongside a lot of stack of covariates to predict if a building is residential, non-residential, and mixed. And these are all examples of projects that have been conducted in data deserts scenarios, particularly in developing nations, where you would not readily have this information available. In more developed nations, probably they have a property register where you can know the actual use of a building across the whole state or across the whole nation. But in scenarios where there are data, these data are not available, you can leverage. You have to think about how you can leverage the available data to generate some of these data, and that's some of the examples and scenarios I've provided to you or explained to you shortly. These approaches or these types of examples are not exhaustive. There are a lot of them, and I'm just trying to signpost you to some of them. This is a paper looking at developed a framework to process location-based social media for urban planning and management. So this is an example of leveraging social media to inform sustainable urban planning and management. This paper is looking at urban heat highland analysis and leveraging Landsat 8's data set, which is publicly available, especially for data desert scenarios. This is looking at spatial analysis of urbanization patterns leveraging Sentinel-2 data, which is also publicly available, particularly within data desert scenarios. And the last one is leveraging the Facebook tool for producing sociality and connectivity. So there are a lot of innovative methods that are being developed that are leveraging existing data sets to produce new data sets that can inform policies, or new insights that can inform policies. Based on all I've said so far, the key is in leveraging available data sets and developing innovative ways of how you can use those available data sets to inform decisions in various contexts and various scenarios. The last example I'm just going to focus on is this one that I recently just came across, where a machine learning approach is used to explore high-resolution urban employment prediction in developing countries. Now, this is fascinating because they're leveraging OpenStreetMap here to model or predict urban employment across, particularly within developing countries. So in countries where information on employability is not available across space, this is a good approach where you can leverage things like OpenStreetMap, which is readily available in most of these developing countries, or because OpenStreetMap's level of completeness varies across different cities, you can leverage other building footprints data set like Google, Microsoft building footprints to do the same approach. And you can inform practical policy decision based by the result of this analysis, or by the result of this machine learning predictions. To leverage existing data in such innovative ways, capacity strengthening is key. And I take a quote from this article. While statistical capacity has improved across the continent in recent decades, it remains low compared to other regions and is hindered by several challenges, such as insufficient capacity and low levels of data literacy. So in developed nations or in data deserts, as much as we focus on how to improve or how to fill the gaps in our data, it is also very, very important for us to focus on capacity strengthening for utilizing the available data to inform decision, because like I said, like I talked about in the start, it's a data divide. On one hand, you have lack of data or limited data. On the other hand, the question is, with the limited data, what can you achieve? What have you been able to achieve? Or what have you been able to utilize? What decision have you been able to inform with that data set? And I will end my presentation by just giving you a quick summary of what I've been able to capture in this short presentation. Data is an important resource in today's age. There is no argument in this. Data desert in itself is a myth, as some data exist and are still available, though with some limitation. There is a need to develop innovative methodologies of utilizing existing data sets to generate insights. So whenever you find yourself in a data desert, I think the message I'm trying to pass across is, don't get limited by that information in itself. what you should be focused on is how can I leverage what is available. So there's a proverb that says when the desirable is not available, the available becomes desirable. So if you find yourself in any case or for any reason, if you find yourself in a data desert, you should be thinking your mindset should be geared towards how can I leverage what is available to still achieve the insights I want to get. And lastly, like I mentioned, capacity strengthening is required to upskill people in data deserts on how to leverage existing data sets. So capacity strengthening, and I think that's part of why we're here. Capacity strengthening. I cannot stress this enough. Capacity strengthening, because for you to develop innovative methods, you need to have some level of skill sets to be able to think in that form and brainstorm and tweak your data in that process. And lastly, efficient utilization of available data sets to support informed decision that yield desirable results will lead to increased investment and interest in data generation in developing countries. So you can't go to a policymaker and say, we don't have data, that's why we're not supporting you with the informed decision we have. We're not supporting you with insights to inform decisions. They will not take it seriously. You need to go to them with a solution and say, with the available data we have, this is the insight we've been able to generate. And if you use this insight, you're going to achieve X, Y, Z. However, we still need additional data. And so if you invest in data generation, it can help us achieve more insights that would help you scale or grow in X, Y, Z. That's the storyline that most policymakers would love to hear, and not we don't have data, so we cannot support you narrative. And I think if we start to think in this direction, if we start to think in this perspective, it will go a long way in ensuring that we are able to balance the growth of data with the utilization of data. On this junction, I'll say thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ademola, for your insightful presentation. When I was sharing his citation, I mentioned that Mr. Ademola is a researcher, and his presentation has shed more light on that. He made us know that data deserts should not limit our capacity. Yes, there is data desert, but data in itself, it's always available. So no matter how limited data we have, we should be able to maximize it. Mr. Dewale also stressed out some key points during his presentation, which includes the fact that reiterating the fact that data is an important resource in today's age. He also mentioned that data desert is a myth, as no matter how deserted an undeveloped nation is, there is data. So it is now left to us to make the available the desirable by looking at how possible we can make use of their limitedly available data to answer our research questions, answer our development questions. And in doing so, Mr. Adewale made presentation of some research work where, even though Nigeria or Africa, as you have it, have a limitation in terms of data availability, they've been able to make use of the limited data to make informed decision or to make data-based recommendations to policymakers, especially during the time of COVID-19, where he shared with us the research on how to know the possibilities of having social distancing at different districts in the country. So yes, I think he also mentioned the fact that we have to go do more capacity building, because if we say we are data deserted in terms of data, when we have the data, do we have the skill, do we have the competence to put this data into use? So capacity building is also an important aspect that we have to look into. And if we have anyone that has a question, I think that will be the best time to come up with the question so that the presenter can do justice to that. So while we wait, I think I don't know if I'll put this as a question. Um, in Nigeria, as we have it, we you mentioned that the last census we had was 2014,
2006.
2006, right? So I think and looking, that's a almost 20 years ago. If
Yeah.
I'm not, that's almost 20 years ago. So do you think using all these quantitative method to make like a projection can actually be representative of what we have in Nigeria? Because if we want to remember, the 2006 census also have its questions, also have its uncertainty, and in some cases, it was documented that the census was not certified. So how do you say we look at that?
Okay, fantastic. And I like that question, and I'm very excited about that question because I'm biased towards population. So like I mentioned, there are two different methods when we talk about estimating population. The top-down method and the bottom-up. The top-down is more utilized where we have population censuses that are more recent, like 20 probably for if we had like a census for Nigeria that was conducted in 2014, sorry, 2020 or 2018, and probably we wanted to scale that into higher resolution, then that would be ideal. The top-down method would be ideal. The top-down method in itself is not projecting the population. It's just taking the population count across administrative units and disaggregating it. So it's not changing the values. It's just telling you that if you have 100 population within an admin area, where are those hundreds located within those admin areas? And so it can be precise in telling you the specific locations where they are and the specific locations where there are no population actually. But the bottom-up approach is where the innovative idea is, which in Nigeria's case, we've been able to utilize. What happens in the bottom-up approach is that we conduct microcensuses in representative locations across Nigeria or across the country where you are interested in, and we do a full count of the population within those cluster units across the country, and we use that to extrapolate population in places where we've not conducted microcensuses. So we utilize that, we feed that into a machine learning model that predicts population in places where we don't have microcensuses conducted. And based on our research, we've seen that this has given us a high accuracy of population prediction across space, and definitely no data is perfect. This is still an estimation at best, and it cannot be taken as an actual count, but it's in usage for active implementation. It is very relevant and very useful. So I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
So just to buttress, like I mentioned, the Holy Grail is a census. We still need to conduct a census, but in scenarios where there is a delay or there's a limitation from the government's perspective to actually take forward that mandate to conduct the census, things like population estimations can still be leveraged to, for example, if you want to know the total population within a subject site, utilizing population estimation has been generated based on this innovative method can help you answer such questions while we anticipate a full general census.
Yeah, thank you very much for the answer. I think it's actually covers mine, and thanks for the information. So we have Mr. Samuel Oyeni here with a question. He thanked you for your lecture, for your presentation, and he's asking a question that, how do we leverage the available data in Nigeria to drive policy changes with the way our government fails to acknowledge the importance of building data banks, which will drive development and efficient resource utilization?
Yeah, so I think this question actually, the last bullet point in my summary actually answers this question. So in a number of government entities, some of the reasons why there's always a pushback in data adoption or policy or insight adoption from data-driven method is because you go with them to say, we don't have data, or you go with them to say, for us to derive insights that you will use to inform this policy, you need to invest in data collection X amount. And most times those governments are always limited in financial resources to conduct such, to invest in such initiative that they are not clearly convinced would derive the results they want. So, and that's why I stressed as much as possible that if you have the opportunity to speak to a policymaker and he tells you that, oh, we have this problem, we have problem XYZ, I think for you to get his listening here, the approach you should take is go to him and say, with the available data, we've been able to generate these insights, which if you plug it into your XYZ would give you this results. However, if you want us to produce more insights that would provide or generate better insights, there should be some level of investment in data collection or data generate or gathering additional data. That in that manner of approach of engagement, you've already given him something to work with. And from a standpoint, if it's a policymaker that knows what they are doing, they would probably first test what you've given them. And if they see the results in the insight you've given them, they will be more willing and more receptive to actually invest in generating additional insights, which is a pathway to engaging with a lot of policymakers, particularly government, that are always pessimistic around the importance of data and how they could use data to probably better achieve results. Because at the end of the day, all policymakers want to achieve results. The only limitation is that they are not sure, they are not convinced that if they invest in data collection, you are going to give them what would help them achieve results. And so they go with their gut feeling. And most time gut feeling are always a dicey or a gamble or a game of luck. And so if you are able to convince them that insights are very relevant and give them something to whet their appetite with, they will come back for more because they've seen the results, and it is easier for you to leverage those conversations in those perspectives. And I'm not just saying this from a perspective of just a researcher. I'm saying it from a perspective of what I've tested and seen to be efficient in engaging with a lot of government agencies over time.
Yeah, thank you for the response. I think that clearly answered the question, and I'm sure Mr. Samuel is satisfied with the response. Also, although he made a follow-up comment saying we hardly have geospatial experts in the key ministries, that is Ministry of Budget and Planning. One wonders what data they rely on to make certain forecasts and the decision.
Well, again, the third bullet point in my summary was hammering on this. Capacity strengthening is key. Capacity strengthening is key. So it's not enough for you to have data. You need to have the skill set to transform that data into insights, because policymakers don't care about the how the data is filtered into insights. What they want is the insight so that they can run with it. And yes, there's a lack of expertise in a lot of government ministries. That is not strange to us, because when the leadership does not understand the value in data, in insights, he surrounds himself with people that are not experts in generating those, or even if he has those kind of people, they become redundant because that is not what he's looking for. But if we are opportune to speak to them from this perspective and let them understand that data drives information, and information delivers results, and we are able to whet their appetites for in some instances, they are going to begin to see the importance and the relevance of data. And I believe that with the wave of AI and artificial intelligence, particularly, and how it's transforming a lot of sectors, there's a more receptive here from policymakers to listen to data experts and geospatial experts in this present age. So it gives us a soft landing when we talk about some of these things. So don't be scared.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Willie. Yeah, the wide acceptance of data in recent times in terms of Internet of Things, AI, deep learning, and what have you, have made people more aware of the importance of data and how data can be used to reduce hard work, just work smart. So that in itself will make the reception will give us a soft landing as the special expert and data analyst. And however, nothing can take the place of capacity building, like our speaker have mentioned, because not just the decision makers, the public also needs to be more aware about the importance of the data, because they supply the data most of the time. And when they know how much the data can be put to good use, that will give them a sense of belonging and will make them, give the right data. So thank you very much. Do we have anyone that have any question?
Maybe just to emphasize while we're waiting for questions. So I'm going to be sharing my slides with the organizers, and so hopefully all participants are going to get their hands on the presentation slides. So it's particularly for the links to the available data sets that I mentioned, so there is a lot more data sets that are publicly available, especially in data deserts. And in case you're working on any project and you get stuck in accessing some type of data, or you don't understand the data that are available in such scenarios, please reach out to me and I'll probably be able to help explore some of the data sets that are available, and probably we can brainstorm and learn some of the innovative methods that could be used to leverage such data sets to answer some of your questions and generate some insights.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Adewale. I think if in the absence of questions, I think we can bid our guest speaker farewell so that, oh, I think someone already dropped something. Any suggestions for focus group organizations for geospatial researchers as many work in isolation of cluster?
So an organization like the City Visionaries is a very valuable one, where I believe they have a lot of community efforts of a lot of community of geospatial experts that work within their group. So you can always reach out to them. And I know a number of other community organizations that potentially you could join. I think also if you're a registered planner, places like the YPF Young Planners Forum is a good opportunity, a good forum for you to be, where you can learn and network with other experts, other geospatial experts, but more broadly, there are a list of focus group organizations out there, and if there's a serious need for us to probably put out a list of them and share more widely. I think the organizers will be in the best positions to do that with the community. So, but I can support the organizers in actually also drafting that out and sharing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adewale. And thank you for being generous with your slide. So he will make this slide available to us. So anyone that wants to have a copy can reach out to us so we can get it across to them. So thank you so much, Mr. Adewale, once again. We called you and you answered. So thank you so much. Yeah.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me.
Oh, Charles, you can always send the message to City Vision. Yeah. Don't worry. When it's time for announcement, we will put up our email address and phone number that you can reach out to in case you have any inquiry. All right. So that being said, I once again we appreciate our invited guests for giving the insightful presentation. And we also, at the same time, we appreciate the participants that joined the meeting for the robust discussion. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being part of this beautiful program. The next point on the agenda is announcement. So I will call on Mr. Timothy come up with any announcement. So he can also share the social media handles of the City Visionaries where you can reach us in case you have inquiry. People asking if there is yes, there are outside Nigeria in developing nations, they have organizations of maybe geographers, they have geospatial experts, they have data experts coming together to have community. But I think City Visionary is a good place to start. City Visionary is a community of professionals, young professionals in the built environment. And I think being a geospatial researcher is a is a is a is a form a big part of this. So if you come to City Visionary, we can always point you in the right direction if we can't help you in-house. So Timothy, can you just come up and share the social media handles of the City Visionary and the contacts? Okay, since Mr. Timothy is also having some technical challenges the with his speaker, so I will share the handle, the social media handle of the City Visionaire in the chat box, so you can contact us there on our email is cityvisionaire at gmail.com. You can contact us on Instagram at cityvisionaire, Twitter or X, our handle is City Visionaire as well. So I will drop that in the chat box now. Thank you for joining today's webinar on behalf of the City Visionaire team. I remain myself, Adeniran Ibrahim. I will thank you for coming and in see you in our next what's it called, in our next program. Thank you.